morning, guys. Man, I haven't been up this early since my Navy days. I'm so, wow, thank you. All right, that's good comedy already. Like was mentioned, real quickly, Dads Inc., Dads Incorporated. We're going through our stint right now about Dad Brand. Next Wednesday, I'll be teaching IronWorks, or presenting IronWorks, so that Wednesday is off. And the last Wednesday will be February 22nd, where we kind of put that Dad Brand all together. Because whether we believe it or not, want it or not, we all have a brand. And so as a walking billboard, we're working with dads and on their brand. I'm Ric Hellmann, formerly known also as Rebecca's husband in the church sometimes. If you know, Rebecca's my wife. She is the women's ministry director. We have 3 kids, Jacob, Caleb, and Savannah. I met Chuck and Ed back there, was telling that I spent 24 years in the Navy. And I retired 4 years ago, came back to Minnesota, and corporate just wasn't the thing for me. So I developed my own coaching company called Purpose Coaching. And for the last 3 years, I've been coaching mostly executive leaders, but really have a heart for dads, for men. Because with all the other groups going around, marginalized groups who haven't had resources, I feel the men I'm coaching are being left behind and can't say anything because we've had it so good for so long. And so men are being kind of left behind, and one of the skill sets is dads. So my company, Purpose Coaching, has had the opportunity through Pastor Roger to continue doing group coaching with dads. So if you ever get tired of Roger on Wednesday nights, come up to us and check out Dads Incorporated. It was a regular Tuesday morning. I was on the sick bay. I worked in medical as a hospital corpsman on board USS Theodore Roosevelt. And we're doing sick call, people coming in. We were getting ready for our regular deployment in about 8 days. I'm back in the ward checking in a patient, and all of a sudden someone says, "Man, some nut job just flew a plane into a building." We're like, what? This is, there was no smartphones in this kind of thing, and so, well, whatever. And then about 18 minutes later, the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And you could just kind of tell something was different. It didn't seem like this deployment in 8 days was going to be liberties and hitting all these ports and doing these great things. Something was different. And so right away, our leaders got over the horn, and everyone from our commanding officer down to our senior medical officer was saying, hey, it's time to get ready. So we were kind of scrambling. The first time since, ever really, hundreds of years, but someone bombed us on our soil. And so that was a completely new, different thing. And especially for an aircraft carrier who goes and kills bad guys, or at least as a deterrent, seemed like a true reality for us. And that was a curveball as we got ready to go. So this sucker punch, when it first happens, like, wait a minute, we're supposed to, you leave in 8 days, and then we're going to hit, Spain, and then we're going to stop in Greece, and then we're going to do all these things, and what are you talking about? What's going to happen now? Like, what are we going to do? Half of our entire ship was on leave, and an aircraft carrier has 3,000 people organic to it, plus another 2,500 of the air wing. This is 2001, so most people aren't having the smartphones and group, me's and these kind of chats. So we had to scramble to get folks back on board the ship because we're leaving. Secretary of the Navy, Robert England, even came on our ship the day we left to give us a great speech, to tell us what was waiting for us. And we worked tremendous hours, sometimes 80 hours a week. When we first got there, we were the junior carrier, so we were on night shift. So we woke up at 7 p.m. or worked at 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. And that was our night shift, and we switched back and forth. So there was a tremendous amount of things. We had more sorties flown off our aircraft carrier than since World War II. We had 3 beer days, which was kind of cool. We got to jump in the water and do swim calls. And we were underway for 159 days straight without seeing land, which at that time was a record since World War II. And the ship that was supposed to relieve us, the USS John F. Kennedy, was late. She wasn't ready to come. So, did we have external oppositions and threats? Yeah, we sure did. We had an enemy now that, like I said, bombed our own soil. So, like, what could happen now? And remember, the USS Cole bombing in Yemen had just happened 11 months ago, right? That would never happen, which kind of shocked the Navy in the country as well. Did we have internal mindsets and fear? Absolutely. The unknown, right? It threw us for a loop 8 days before we were supposed to go. And I can imagine, as we'll read about here, the Jews and Nehemiah in chapter 4 are probably facing similar feelings and thoughts as the crew of the USS Theodore Roosevelt did on September 11, 2001. And I'm wondering if they said the same things or even did the same things in their uncertainty. And so, as we talk about leaders, take notice about the leadership qualities that Nehemiah has and displays that allow him to overcome his known circumstances and his unknown circumstances as he begins to build this wall. So 4 times, Nehemiah displays his leadership that allows him to overcome. See, he won up the circumstances. He didn't go high and to the right and go crazy, bull in a china shop, but he also didn't sit back meekly and kind of indecisive on what to do. He continued to one up his situation. And as we found out before 9/11, it's easy to lead when it's easy, right? When you've got all your resources, time, talent, it's easy. But talk to someone when it's hard, when you don't have resources, people aren't showing up, bad attitudes, unknowns. So we'll see as Nehemiah becomes very methodical in his awareness, and then as a good leader, he responds with intentional exercise. And he has 2 parts when he's doing this. He has a being part, his being, and he also has a doing part, the actionable part you'll see here. So Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1. But it so happened when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And he spoke for his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heaps of the rubbish, stones that are burned?" Verse 3. Now Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "Whatever they build, if even a fox goes on it, he will break down their stone wall." So right now, the awareness that Nehemiah has is like, oh, there's some people talking trash, right? They're getting ready to see, and they've heard what we're going to do, and it's just, smack talk right now. And so Nehemiah has this awareness now that, wait a second, okay, something's happened. And what's his first response? In verse 4, he begins to pray. So that first one is leaders depend upon God, number 1. And Nehemiah's first response is in verse 4. "Hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn the reproach on their own heads and give them as a plunder to the land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you. For they have provoked you to anger before the builders." So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. So the response of the new awareness was praying. That was the being part of Nehemiah. But then there's also a doing. Hey, we're going to build this wall. And I love that in as we get into verse 6 there, that people had a mind to work, right? They were motivated. They were inspired. Like, let's do this. We got this. But his enemies kind of go up a level. And in verse 7 we see Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and the gaps were beginning to be closed, that they became very angry. And all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion. So now his enemies have leveled up. Okay, now we're not just going to talk a bunch of trash. Now let's get together. Let's conspire to go check out those Jews and go do something, right? So Nehemiah gets a new awareness. He realizes that, there's some people that might actually do something now. And so his response in verse 9, nevertheless, we made our prayer to God, and because of them, we set a watch against them day and night. So same thing, Nehemiah's new awareness. He chooses to be intentional with his being as he prays again, and his doing, he one-ups it. We're not just going to build the wall. We're going to set a watch. In the Navy, and even on board the ship, regardless of 9/11 or not, you stand duty, you stand watch, right? You're always on watch. So you may work your entire day in a medical department or wherever you work, but then you will stand watch while everyone's sleeping. The commanding officer of a 6,000 men and women ship isn't on 24/7. So you have what's called an officer of the day. So the CO can sleep. And that individual takes a 2 to 4 hour watch and stands guard and steering the ship as it's going. So you can start to see as Nehemiah is one-upping his leadership with intention. And the second point that what leaders have a growth mindset. And look at verse 10. Then Judah said, the strength of the laborers is failing, and there's so much rubbish that we are not able to build the wall. Well, what happened in verse 6? We just had a mindset for the people who had a mind to work. What happened? Yeah, but they're conspiring now. We know they're coming. But that growth mindset says, yeah, that doesn't matter. Here's our intentional response. We don't get on a fixed mindset of woe is us. There's so much work to do. We're scared. Nehemiah comes in with his growth mindset to say, okay, we'll set a watch. Verse 11, and our adversaries said, they will neither know nor see anything till we come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was, when the Jews who dwelt near them came, that they told us 10 times, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. So now a new awareness. Now his enemies are kind of one-upping their pressure. The enemy is coming. It's imminent. They've been telling folks now they're coming. And no matter where you turn, verse 12 here, from whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. They're telling the Jews this. We're coming. And so Nehemiah has a new awareness now. It's imminent. Someone's coming. And so his response, again, is intentional. And before he kind of shows us what his being is, his posture, and what he commands his Jews to do, first displays his third leadership quality here, that leaders are not only competent, but confident. That leaders are not only competent, but confident. And as we see here, right? So back to verse 12. So it was when the Jews who dwelt near the Jews who dwelt near them came, that they told us 10 times, whatever place you turn, they will be upon us. So I can imagine Nehemiah has got all his crew. And he says, therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families with their swords and their spears and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, right? He gets on his horse And he tells the Jews, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. He gives the William Wallace speech before the enemy is coming. And what I love about Nehemiah is in his doing part of that speech, right? He tells about two things, right? He tells them what not to do. Don't be afraid. But he also tells them what to do. And good leaders do that. Not just don't do that anymore. Stop that. Don't be that. Okay, but then what? Be this way. Believe in the Lord. Fight for your brothers, your sisters, your wives, your daughters. And so, verse 15, and it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. So now, Nehemiah's fourth awareness, right? Our enemies know that we know, and that the Lord had brought their plot to nothing. And so what is Nehemiah's response in his new awareness, his intentional exercising his response? So it was from that time on that half of my servants worked at the construction, while the other half held spears, the shields, the bows, and wore armor. And the leaders were behind all the house of Judah. And those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked at construction, and with the other held a weapon. Every one of the builders held his sword girded at his side as he built, and the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. So with this new awareness, the fourth thing that we see what Nehemiah does is leaders stay ready, they never get ready. The battle, the threat may have been over and done, and that's fine. But a good leader doesn't say, lesson learned. Okay, good for us. That becomes a folk story. We'll tell it later. No. Leaders stay ready. They never get ready. So he does. He puts his crew on the walls. Remember, there's half that have a watch, and the other half have a weapon or something with them, right? So they might be slowing down the production of the wall, but they're ready because you never know, right? This reminds me of Seabees in the Navy, right? For Seabees, they build and they fight, and right? And there's pictures they got M16, whatever kind of thing, and no shirt on behind their back, and they're building roads and they're doing HVAC work because you never know. And when they go to austere places, they could be the first ones down, like building a runway for an airplane to come. So they're working, but they're vigilant with their weapon on the back, and they're ready for the enemy when they come. So good leaders stay ready. They never get ready. Just like the Theodore Roosevelt, we were ready. And regardless what was thrown our way, we were set to leave in 8 days, and we did. And what we found out at the time was USS John F. Kennedy, which was in 2001, that was America's ship, right? The JFK. Partly because she was a conventional carrier. There was no nuclear reactors on her. So JFK could go to New York, could go anywhere in the country around the world with a threat of that. Well, she was spending so much time being the showboat for the Navy that when it came time to, let's go, it's your watch, she was about a month and a half late. Their elevators didn't work. They couldn't get their weapons going. So we sat there. So the JFK was a good example of they had to get ready. They weren't staying ready. And I love how this chapter of Nehemiah ends because it's something that is near and dear to my heart. So you get a little bonus here of Nehemiah's leadership. Verse 19, then I said to the nobles, the rulers, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there, and our God will fight for us. So again, he's continuing to be intentional with his being, right? That confidence he has, making decisions, getting his crew to stay ready and never get ready with his words and his speeches. But he's also saying, hey, the trumpeter will be next to me. And when you hear this, that's what this means. And he goes on to say in verse 21, so we labored in the work, and half the men held the spears from daybreak until the stars appeared. At the same time, I also said to the people, let each man and his servant stay at night in Jerusalem, that they may be our guard by night and a working party by day. And here it is, this bonus part from Nehemiah. So neither I, my brethren, my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me took off our clothes, except that everyone took them off for washing. And in my version of that is leaders eat last, right? Hey, we're in the grind, we're in the suck, we're doing this. I'm right there with you. You see the dust on it. You're not seeing, brand new boots and freshly pressed clothes and, blueberry muffins on my beard and that kind of thing, right? You're seeing Nehemiah out there doing it too. And leaders eat last. They make sure that crew is squared away, good to go. They have all the things that they need. So I love this chapter and how it ends, because it's a good reminder of what leaders should be and what leaders should do. So now you've got some very similar to what IronWorks has been in the past. You've got the 4 questions on the back there. Look through this as your leadership lens, right? If you're married, you're a leader with your marriage. If you have children in a house, you're a spiritual leader of your household. Maybe it's your job, right? It doesn't matter what perspective or how it lands, but you're a leader. And so look at these questions through the lens of your leadership. How can you depend more on God? Nehemiah did, as we saw in that first part. His first thing when he heard that news was to pray. 2, what areas can you change to a growth mindset? Where are you stuck in a fixed mindset? That's how it's always going to be. What's the point? Look at your lens, or look at you through your lens, and how you can have a growth mindset. Thirdly, where has your confidence declined? 4, where can you apply the 4th example to stay ready and never get ready? So when your version of 9/11, your version of COVID, your version of whatever happens, are you, your spouse, your family, whatever it is, are you ready? And then lastly, what's the one thing when you leave this morning that you will commit to? I'm not sure how much time we have. Someone will let me know. But feel free to discuss and answer those questions, and then we'll recap here shortly. Thank you.